My name is John, and I am a large, sensitive Chinese man. I like to wear tight pants and tell strangers stories about my feelings. I've never been in a fist fight. I don't know how to change the oil in my car. And when I'm completely naked, it looks like someone molded stale banana pudding into the shape of a Care Bear. I am not a man's man, and somehow this has all been working out for my wife. Until recently, when we purchased our first home, and I was suddenly thrust into the role of man of the house, a title I am thoroughly unprepared and unqualified for. For example, our first night as homeowners, we spent over an hour inside of Home Depot trying to figure out the difference between joint compound and spackle. When my wife just sort of sighed and said, I wish one of us were manly. Now, for the record, my wife is a feminist poet who writes in verse about the oppression of the patriarchy and the toxicity of masculinity. And I'm not manly enough for her. But only 2 weeks after moving into our new home, I heard my wife screaming hysterically because she had discovered, dangling precariously from the tree branch above the path to our front door, a 2.5 foot long wasp nest. And when I saw that nest and how upset it was making the woman I love, I immediately experienced this anger, this raw, seething anger. And I had this uncontrollable urge to kill every single one of these insects. And this feeling was so irrational and so intense. I was like, wait a second. Is this what testosterone feels like? So I went onto YouTube, and I discovered that these, in fact, were not wasps, but bald-faced hornets. And based on the size of the nest, there were approximately 600 of them living above our front door. Now, for those of you that don't know, bald-faced hornets are way worse than wasps. They are the most aggressive and lethal insect in North America because they're filled with so much venom, they can sting you over and over and over. And when they sting you, it feels like you got hit by a jackhammer. And if they so much as perceive that you're a threat to their nest, they will chase you for the length of over 2 football fields. And even if you jump inside a pool of water, they will wait for you to surface because their thirst for vengeance has evolved object permanence. Well, my wife wanted to call an exterminator, but they all wanted like $350. And I told her that felt like a tax on account of me not being a man. And she said, you know, I kind of doubt that you can take on one of Mother Nature's most efficient killing machines, given that you once asked another man to kill a spider, and you audibly cried when I found a tick on your back. Now, ordinarily, this sort of appeal to reason, mixed with uncalled for emasculating commentary, might win an argument for my wife. But she didn't know I had been back onto YouTube. And I had been watching insect snuff films. And these films were made by men, real men, The sort of men that stand around and discuss sport. Men with calluses on their hand. The sort of men that scratch themselves and then sniff their fingers. And I watched as these men destroyed bald-faced hornets' nests with foams and sprays and even a flamethrower. And after hours of studying them, it felt as though their manhood had rubbed off on me. And I devised a plan. So I bought 2 cans of insecticide, and I waited until night. And with my wife nervously waiting at the front door with 911 literally 1 button push away, I put on a pair of safety goggles and a pair of long underwear and 2 pairs of jeans and a sweater and a sweatshirt and a winter coat and a scarf. And I waddled outside in a suit of armor made out of a J. Crew catalog. But I hadn't taken into account that it was July and the temperature was in the 90s. So within seconds, the goggles fogged up and I couldn't see anything, which was a problem because in all of the videos I watched, they stressed that you don't want to just get the spray on the outside of the nest. All the guys in the video said, if you're gonna do it, you gotta get your spray in the beehole. And I was nervous because I wanted to get it in the beehole, but I'd never seen one in real life before. So I just aimed where I thought it was, and I emptied both cans, and then I ran inside. And I felt pretty good about it until the next morning when I discovered that I'd only managed to kill 3 bald-faced hornets and make approximately 597 of them very upset. Because I couldn't see what I was doing, I had released my spray prematurely. And I had covered our lawn in a bukkake of insecticide, which ultimately destroyed all the vegetation in our front yard, doing hundreds and hundreds of dollars in damages. And I was so furious. I went right out and I got 4 cans of insecticide and a 10-foot tall ladder so I could get right up on that nest. And then I decided I needed a beekeeping hat because they don't fog up. So I went to REI and an employee there said the guy working in the shoe department was a beekeeper. And I thought, what luck! Finally, another man I can talk to. Someone who understands what I'm going through. And so I found the guy, and like all middle-aged employees at REI, regardless of gender, he had a fanny pack and a ponytail. And so I just sort of launched right in, and I told him all about the kind of insecticide I was using and about the ladder and the beekeeping hat because it doesn't fog up. And he just stopped me. And he said, whoa, what's the big deal, man? Why don't you just sack up and nuke the fuckers? Let me tell you, in a life filled with humiliation and countless indignities, I think my lowest moment may have been getting called out by a shoe salesman wearing wool socks and Tevas. So I went right home. I didn't even wait for it to get dark. I just put on all the clothes and the beekeeping hat, and I started climbing up the ladder. But about 2/3 of the way up, I realized I didn't check to make sure the ground was level under the ladder. And so it started tipping over into the tree. And my head started falling into the hornet's nest. And as I got closer, I could hear the buzzing of the hornets. So I just threw my weight the other direction, and the ladder fell away from the tree, and I fell from 6 feet in the air onto the ground. And my wife heard the commotion, and she opened the front door, and she saw me writhing in pain on the ground, and she said, "Would you just look at yourself? What do you think you're doing? You're gonna get yourself killed." And when I saw that look on my wife's face, I knew that she was more upset with me than she'd ever been at those hornets. I knew I had to stop. And so I went online to find an exterminator, but I came across this article, and it said that if you can coexist with bald-faced hornets, you should. Because, ironically, they're really good for your yard. And they all just die when it gets cold. So for the rest of that summer, we had a few hundred neighbors living above our front door. We never got stung once, and my wife never said another thing about it. But that November, after there was a cold snap, and I was pretty sure they were all dead, I got my garden hose, and I put it on the power setting. And I took that nest down, and I stood over it, and I said, "I got you." Because my name is John, and I am technically a man.